The wedding dress still hung on the cedar peg when the bandits came. Lydia had sewn each stitch by hand, each thread knotted with the hope of a simple life. Her fiancé, Charles, had promised her a homestead beyond the Mississippi, a quiet plot near the tree line. Children. Peace. But promises, she would learn, weigh nothing when measured against greed. They came at dusk. 5 of them, faces wrapped in cloth, horses dusted in the red dirt of the plains. Lydia was feeding the chickens when the first grabbed her, dragging her by the hair while her scream tore across the clearing. She thought Charles would come running. She thought wrong. He emerged from the cabin slowly, head bowed, silver jingling in his palm. He didn't look at her. "You said it wouldn't be rough," he told them. "I want her breathing, just enough to keep them off me if the law comes sniffing." That's when Lydia understood. This wasn't a robbery. It was a transaction. She wasn't being stolen. She was being sold. Her mind split between terror and betrayal. She fought, kicked, screamed, but they tied her hands and threw her across a saddle. The last thing she saw before they rode off was Charles turning his back, walking into the cabin as if she had never been real. The ride was long and brutal, the men laughing, arguing over who'd get her first. She prayed for death. But death didn't come. Something else did. They had stopped to camp along a stream, tossing her near the fire like luggage. That's when she heard it. A sound in the trees, low and swift. A shadow moved, then another. Arrows flew like whispers. 3 bandits fell before they could stand. The 4th ran screaming. The last grabbed her by the neck, lifting his blade, only for it to fall from his hand a second later, blood blooming from his chest. A man stood behind him. Tall, silent. His long hair tied back, his chest painted with symbols she didn't understand. A Cheyenne warrior. He looked at her, but not with pity, not with ownership, just presence. Lydia lay trembling, the fire crackling beside her. She was no longer anyone's bride, no longer anyone's possession, just a girl in the dark, and the warrior who had ended her nightmare. The warrior didn't speak, not as he checked the trees for more threats, not as he wiped his blade clean on the bandit's coat, not even as he approached Lydia, still tied and shaking near the fire. His silence wasn't cold. It was precise, like a man who had learned long ago that words often did less than actions. He knelt beside her, eyes dark as the river beyond the trees, and gently reached for the rope at her wrists. She flinched, instinct burning hot, but he paused. His hand stayed open, steady. Only when she gave the smallest nod did he begin to cut the bindings. "You are safe now," he said finally, his voice low and even, the English carefully pronounced but not unsure. "They will not come again." Lydia blinked, disoriented by the stillness after such violence. Her throat ached, her hands were raw, her thoughts spun like broken wagon wheels. "Who are you?" she whispered. "My name is Kohana," he replied. "I saw smoke. I followed it." He handed her a water skin. She drank greedily, choking once but not stopping. Her lips were split. Her dress was torn, her pride shattered. "They were going to sell me again," she muttered. "Like I was nothing." Kohana looked into the fire, his face unreadable. "You are not nothing." Lydia didn't know whether to cry or scream. "You don't know me." "I know someone who fights when tied, who survives when abandoned." He stood and turned towards the horses, beginning to strip the bandits' saddlebags. "Take what you need, then we leave." "We—" Her voice cracked. He didn't turn. "You cannot stay here. You will not last alone." A long silence stretched between them. Lydia stared at the shadows dancing on the trees, then down at her hands, bruised, bloody, but hers. Charles had left her to die. These men had tried to break her. But this stranger, this warrior, had not asked her for anything. Not her name, not her obedience, not her tears, just a choice. She rose on shaking legs and crossed to the saddlebags, her fingers brushing coins, dried meat, flint. "Where are we going?" she asked. Kohana didn't smile, but something softened in his gaze. "Where they will not follow. Where you choose what happens next." And for the first time in days, Lydia took a breath that didn't taste like fear. They traveled in silence at first, Lydia clinging to the saddle of a stolen horse, every bump in the trail rattling her bones. Kohana rode ahead, his form a silhouette against the soft, pink glow of morning, bow slung across his back, knife at his hip. He didn't glance back often, but somehow she never felt left behind. The prairie stretched wide and endless, as if the world itself had no walls. Lydia didn't ask where they were going. She didn't care. Every step that took her farther from Charles, from that fire, from the betrayal, was enough. But by the third day, her silence felt heavier than her bruises. As they stopped by a shallow stream to drink, she spoke. "You don't talk much, do you?" Kohana knelt beside the water, rinsing his hands. "Talking is for those who need to prove something." "And you don't?" "I already know who I am." She envied that, his certainty, his stillness. Lydia stared at the reflection in the water. Her face looked unfamiliar. Her lips swollen, one eye darkened, dust streaking across her cheeks like war paint. "Do you know what it feels like," she whispered, "to be sold by the man who swore to love you?" Kohana didn't answer right away. He picked up a smooth river stone and turned it in his palm. "Yes." She looked at him, startled. "You were sold?" "Not by a lover, but by someone who should have fought beside me. My brother once chose gold over our people. I carry that memory still." He tossed the stone. It skipped twice before vanishing beneath the surface. "So what did you do?" she asked. "I walked away from the ruins and started something stronger." Lydia hugged her knees to her chest. "I don't know who I am without Charles, without the farm, the future I thought I had." "Then it is time to find out," he said. "Not as someone's bride, not as someone's victim, but as you." She stared at him, unsure whether to believe the quiet conviction in his voice. But it echoed inside her like a forgotten name. That night, as they camped beneath a sky bursting with stars, Kohana laid his blanket beside hers, not too close, not too far. Just near enough for her to feel that if the dark came again, she would not face it alone. By the 5th day, they reached the foothills, land where grass gave way to stone, and trees whispered things Lydia couldn't yet understand. Kohana led her to a hidden hollow beneath the cliffs, where a stream trickled softly, and wildflowers pushed through the rock like defiance made bloom. "We stay here," he said. "It is far. Safe." Lydia slid from her horse, her muscles stiff and aching. The ride had bruised her body, but it was the silence of her thoughts that wore her down more. The echoes of Charles's betrayal, the hands that had grabbed her, the eyes that had laughed as if she were nothing but meat. Kohana gathered wood without asking. He showed her how to strip bark, where to pile dry moss, how to stack stones to trap heat. His movements were quiet, efficient. Every gesture offered her something the men before had taken. Respect. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, kneeling beside the fire he had built. "You don't even know me." Kohana didn't pause. "I know what was done to you. That is enough." She looked at him then, not just at his broad shoulders or the scars crisscrossing his forearms, but at his stillness. He was not like the men she'd grown up around. He wasn't loud. He didn't puff his chest or make promises. He just was. "Most men would have left me," she said. "Many would have claimed me. I claim nothing, he said. I offer shelter. The rest is yours. The words hit her harder than any blow. No one had ever left her to choose. Not Charles. Not her father. Not the world. That night, she lay wrapped in a blanket, staring at the stars through the canopy above. Kohana sat by the fire, humming a low tune, half song, half prayer. Will they come looking? She asked. The bandits? Charles? He didn't look at her. Maybe. But they will not find you here, and if they try, he tapped the hilt of his knife. They will regret it. She turned onto her side, staring into the flames. I don't know if I'll ever trust a man again. Then do not, he said gently. Trust yourself first. The rest will follow. And in the hush of the firelight, Lydia let the tears come. Not from fear, but from the slow, painful shedding of the girl who had once believed her worth was a dowry. She was beginning to believe in something else now. Herself. Days slipped into rhythm. Lydia learned to wake with the sun, to gather berries from thorny bushes without tearing her hands, to gut fish with a knife that once made her flinch. The hollow became less a hiding place and more a sanctuary, a space where no one knew her name as a possession, only as a person. Kohana taught her without condescension. How to spot animal tracks, how to read the clouds, how to sleep with one ear open just in case. She never had to ask for help. He simply noticed what she didn't know and offered the knowledge like a stone passed hand to hand. One morning, she caught him watching her. She was rinsing her hands in the stream, hair falling loose around her shoulders, when she looked up and met his gaze. He didn't look away, and neither did she. Do you still think about him? He asked quietly. She blinked, startled. Charles? He nodded. I try not to, she admitted. But sometimes I remember the way he said my name, like it was his to carry. Kohana's jaw tightened. That is not love. That is ownership. And you? She asked. Has your heart ever belonged to anyone? A shadow crossed his face, something ancient and quiet. Once, a long time ago. She died in childbirth. I buried her beside the river where the grass grows wild. Lydia lowered her gaze. I'm sorry. Don't be. She taught me something no warrior ever could. That love is not what you hold, it's what you let stand. They didn't speak for a while after that, but the silence was not heavy. It was full. That night, Lydia sat by the fire, knees tucked to her chest, watching Kohana sharpen his blade. If I never go back, she said slowly, who do I become? You become who you choose, he replied, not who you were promised to be. She leaned her head back and closed her eyes. The fire crackled between them, but it was something else she felt. The slow heat rising in her chest when she thought of his voice, his calm, the way he never reached for her but was always there. She had been touched too roughly, too often. But this was something different. Something that waited. Something unnamed. And though she hadn't yet said it aloud, her heart had already begun to listen. Rain came in the night, soft and steady, wrapping the world in mist. Lydia awoke to the scent of wet pine and the rhythm of droplets tapping against stone. She sat beneath the overhang, knees drawn close, wrapped in the blanket Kohana had laid over her after she'd fallen asleep. He was already outside, tending to the fire, shielding it from the damp with a curved piece of bark. You should stay dry, she said, her voice still thick with sleep. He looked over his shoulder, rain trickling down his face like silver threads. The fire feeds the spirit, he replied. Letting it die is like letting the silence win. She didn't fully understand what he meant, but she felt it. That deep, slow-burning kind of quiet that had once been pain and was now something warmer. She joined him without thinking, helping feed small sticks into the fire's edge. Their hands brushed once. Neither pulled away. "I used to believe love was being chosen," she said after a long silence. "Like a prize, something earned." Kohana nodded. "Many are taught that. Few unlearn it." "And now?" "Now," she whispered, "I wonder if love is something that lives in the space where no one asks anything of you, but you give anyway." He didn't answer with words. He simply looked at her, his gaze deeper than the shadows, and Lydia felt her breath catch, not from fear, but recognition. She had never been looked at that way, not as a transaction, not as a problem, but as a person, a woman, still healing but whole. That night they shared a meal in silence, the rain still falling, though gentler now. Kohana carved a small token from bone, shaped like a flame, and handed it to her. "Why a flame?" she asked. "Because fire doesn't ask the world to make room for it. It just burns." She closed her fingers around it, the heat of his touch still on the carving. And though no promise was spoken, no kiss exchanged, something passed between them that could not be undone. She went to sleep beneath the sound of rain and dreams filled not with escape, but with belonging. In a world that once tried to silence her, she had found something stronger than vengeance. She had found someone who didn't rescue her, but reminded her how to rescue herself. And now, her heart no longer needed to hide. It was on the 8th morning that the past came riding out of the trees. Lydia was grinding roots for tea when she saw the dust trail in the distance, just a whisper above the ridge, too controlled to be a wild animal. Her pulse quickened. Kohana had gone to check traps by the creek, but she didn't call out. Instead, she stood slowly, back straight, knife in her hand. The rider emerged from the woods like a bad memory dressed in leather. Charles. He looked thinner, wilder, but the arrogance still rode in his posture like it had never left. His eyes landed on her and narrowed. "Lydia," he said, dismounting, "you're alive." "No thanks to you." "I came back," he said, approaching. "I tried to track you. The bandits turned on me too, took my money. You sold me," she cut in, voice steady, "with eyes wide open and silver in your hand." "I was desperate," he hissed. "We owed money. You don't understand." "No," she said. "You don't." His jaw clenched, eyes flicking toward the edge of the camp. "What is this place? You living like some wild girl now?" He spotted the fire, the furs, the second set of footprints. "So that's how it is? You were mine." The sound of a bowstring pulled tight ended the sentence. Kohana stood behind him, arrow nocked, calm as ever. "She was never yours." Charles turned slowly, hands raised. "Easy now. I just came for what's mine." "She is not a thing to take," Kohana said. "Not a horse, not a rifle, not a woman." Lydia stepped between them before a shot could fly. "I choose where I belong," she said. "And it's not with a coward who trades promises for profit." Charles's face twisted. "You'll regret this." "I already did," she said, "but not anymore." Kohana didn't lower the bow until Charles mounted and disappeared down the trail, spitting curses into the trees. Only then did Lydia exhale. Kohana turned to her, gaze searching. "You were calm." "I wasn't," she said. "I just didn't want him to see me shake." He saw something else. "What?" "A woman who no longer feared his shadow." And as they stood in the quiet after the storm, Lydia knew something had changed, not just in the way she walked, but in the way she would never again let a man write her ending. They watched the trail long after Charles vanished, the tension in the air slow to lift. Lydia said nothing at first. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what she'd just done. Stood before the man who once owned her future, and handed it back. Kohana remained nearby, close enough to protect, far enough to respect. When she finally spoke, her voice was low. "I thought I'd freeze, or run, or break. But you didn't," he said, "because that girl's gone." She looked at him. "Do you think he'll come back?" "Yes," he answered without hesitation, "but not alone, and not for you, for control." Lydia clenched her jaw. "Then I won't be here." Kohana tilted his head. "Where will you be?" Ahead of him, not behind. That night, the fire felt different. Not just a source of warmth, but a symbol. Lydia added wood to it with purpose, like she was feeding something inside herself. Kohana sat across from her, watching quietly. She met his gaze. "You've never asked for anything from me." "Why would I?" "Because most men do." "I am not most men." She nodded slowly. "I know." After a long pause, she rose and crossed the small space between them. She knelt beside him and placed the carved flame he had given her days ago into his hand. "You told me this meant fire doesn't ask to be accepted. It just burns." "Yes. But fire also gives light," she said. "And I've been walking in the dark too long." Kohana looked at her. Really looked. "You're not asking for rescue?" "Number, I'm asking if there's room beside you for someone still learning how to stand." He didn't smile. He didn't reach for her. He simply nodded. "There is." That night they didn't speak again. But Lydia lay beside him beneath the same blanket, no longer a stranger hiding from the world. And when she fell asleep, it wasn't out of exhaustion, but peace. In the morning, she didn't look over her shoulder once. Her feet were firm, her spirit steady. The fire hadn't saved her, but it had waited, and now it walked with her. In a world that had tried to consume her, Lydia had become the one thing it couldn't smother, a woman who had burned, survived, and stayed lit. They traveled again, but this time it wasn't flight. It was movement with purpose. Lydia no longer rode hunched in silence or gripping fear between her ribs. She sat tall in the saddle, scanning the horizon like a woman with her own eyes, not borrowed ones. Kohana rode beside her, saying little, but watching everything. They passed through valleys dotted with wildflowers, crossed rivers swollen with snowmelt, and paused atop ridges where the land seemed to stretch forever, untouched by the cruelty she'd left behind. One evening, they reached a place where 3 trails split. One headed toward the settler towns, one toward Cheyenne lands, and one deeper into wilderness where few dared to go. Lydia dismounted first, staring at the fork in the road. "This is where I choose," she said. Kohana didn't ask which path she meant. "You don't owe me anything," he said gently. "I offered protection, not ownership." "And you gave me more than that," she said. "You gave me space to become." She looked down the path that led back to civilization. "That one takes me to a world where my name still means property." She pointed toward the wilderness. "That one's a life of solitude. I'm not sure I'm built for silence anymore." Then she turned toward the trail that led toward Kohana's people. "And this one, I don't know who I'd be there." Kohana stepped forward. "You'd be Lydia, or any name you chose, and you'd walk beside me, not behind." She searched his face. "And you? What would you be?" "Not your savior," he said. "Just your shadow, if that's what you needed, or your home, if that's what you wanted." The wind swept through the grass like breath, and she closed her eyes. When she opened them, she stepped onto the path toward the Cheyenne lands. Not rushed, not clutched, just chosen. "Then let's go," she said, "not as a woman rescued, but as a woman who finally knows what her heart is worth." Kohana nodded once, and together they led the horses forward, the sun low behind them. Lydia didn't look back. She didn't need to. Her past had burned. Her silence had ended. And for the first time, her story belonged only to her. The village lay nestled between tall bluffs, hidden by pine, and protected by generations of footsteps that knew the land like a lullaby. As they entered, no one pointed. No one whispered. They looked, yes, but not with suspicion. Curiosity, perhaps, caution, but not rejection. Lydia rode with her chin high, eyes steady. Her dress was tattered but mended. Her knife hung at her hip. Her scars, visible and otherwise, walked beside her like old friends that no longer defined her. Kohana said nothing as they passed the outer fires. He let her set the pace. Let her decide how to carry herself. When the elders met them near the gathering lodge, Lydia stepped forward before he could speak. "I am not Cheyenne," she said. "I am not asking to be. I am only asking for room to breathe." One of the elder women nodded. "Breathing is a right. Becoming is earned." Another asked, "What did you leave behind?" "A man who sold me," she answered. "A name that didn't belong to me. A life that wanted my silence more than my truth." The elders looked to Kohana, and he nodded once. "She is fire-born," he said. "She rose from ash not with vengeance, but with choice." They said no more. They didn't need to. That night, a small fire was lit outside the lodge for her, not as a welcome, but as a beginning. She sat beside it, watching flames dance like memories made visible. Kohana brought her a carved token, the same shape as the one he'd given her before, but this one different. Etched into it was the symbol for endurance. "You're not mine," he said, sitting beside her, "but if you choose, I'll walk with you, as long as you let me." She took the token and wrapped his hand in hers. "You never claimed me," she whispered, "and that's why my heart is yours." There was no kiss, no ceremony, just the fire between them and the understanding that love built from a choice, not debt, not fear, was the only kind worth keeping. Lydia had been sold, stolen, stripped. But in the end, she had given something no one could take, her heart, and she gave it not in desperation, but in strength. A heart not traded, a love not owed, a woman not claimed, only chosen.